Hey everybody, how's it going this morning? Just early morning right now. Heading up to Stockton Lake. Got a Fish the Moment on the water seminar to do today. We're going to do some jerkbait fishing up there, so should be good. Should be wet. Going to be raining all day long, so got everything ready to go for that. And hey, just a couple little housekeeping things before we get into today's topic. Just wanted to remind everybody that next Thursday, the 17th of December, Johnny and I are holding our Advanced Winter Crankbait online virtual seminar with Fish the Moment. And this is going to be a really good deal. We're going to be covering, going into super great depth about winter crankbaiting techniques. A lot of, it's probably one of the biggest overlooked techniques in bass fishing. But it's going to be on a Thursday night starting 7 o'clock. You can go on fishthemoment.com and sign up for the seminar. I think we still have a few slots open. You might check with Johnny on that, but that's going to be a really good deal. But hey, anyway, just wanted to do today's topic on something that's, again, very applicable to what we have right now, and that is how weather affects bass in December. And weather is like such a huge factor in fishing as far as, determining the behavior of bass, the position of bass, the relative aggressiveness or passiveness of the fish. And, December is just as important as any other month as far as weather goes. Right off the bat, I want to say that weather, when you're talking about weather affecting bass, it's all relative to where you live geographically and the type of water that you fish. And so much of it has to do with, water clarity. Water clarity, in my opinion, a lot of times is even more important than water temperature in December, as far as, how the weather affects fish. So a lot of it has to do with the passages of cold fronts that you have, warming trends, that type of stuff. But I sort of wanted to go over, some common lakes that people fish around the country and sort of give some tips and advice on, the best way to approach them under several different conditions. Most of the lakes in the country, I'm going to guess, that people fish, if you look geographically across the country, like I live in Missouri, and if you're talking about maybe like straight across the United States, like, where I'm at, Table Rock in that area, if you go straight across the country, you're heading over, towards Kentucky Lake, going further east, Fort Loudon, and then on east even further, like maybe to Lake Norman in North Carolina, sort of on that same geographic line, or maybe 200 miles north or south of there. You've got a lot of different basic similarities in how the bass behave in the wintertime based upon different weather patterns. Now, for me, most of the time, when you're dealing with wintertime bass, I'm going to sort of classify, and instead of going specifically into detail on every single type of water clarities, I want to sort of give like an overview of what most people deal with, and then you can sort of like apply it to your own lake based upon any differences they have. Most of the lakes that we're talking about around the country, this time of year, you will have some type of water within that lake that has like the 2 to 4 foot of water visibility range. And then you've got a lot of different mixed cover. You got, a lot of different rock variations. You got everything from boulders to chunk rock to pea gravel in these lakes. And then you got, cover could be rocky points, it could be clay points, sandy points, whatever like that goes. But what you have in there is December, in my opinion, is it's sort of like there's two different phases of December. You've got early December, which is actually, sort of the late fall period. And then based upon the weather patterns that you have, mid-December or later December can fall into like, early to mid-winter patterns. And, sometimes by late December, the fish are completely in their hardcore winter patterns based upon, the type of, weather that's been coming through the system. But the the way the weather affects bass a lot of times in these lakes in December, and I'm going to talk, let's just, for sake of not going into like making this an hour-long video, let's keep it, basic to like right now. We're in mid-December. We're in that transition time right now between, the early winter to mid-winter type patterns. Water temperatures right now in most of the lakes across the country are going to be probably 5 to 8, probably about 5 to 8 degrees above their coldest parts that they're going to get eventually. Like, for example, right now in Missouri, a lot of our water temperatures are still, in the low 50s, 50, 52, 53 degrees. Eventually, as December wears on and it gets into January, those water temperatures are going to drop down into the 40s. Some of the places around the state here, it's even going to get down to 40 or below. So for the most part, December, you're looking at that water temperature about 5 degrees, above its coldest point. The weather and how it affects the bass right now in December, first thing you want to remember on there is water clarity on that. Water clarity is going to have a lot to do with how those fish position and how they bite on certain days. In overall, here we're talking about just a sort of a broad definition of it. One of the things that will help to remember is if that water temperature is anywhere in that 50 to 55 degree range, the best days that you're going to have in December, if you have that water clarity in that 2 to 4 foot range, are going to be your cloudy days or your heavy, partly cloudy to cloudy days still, even in the wintertime. In those type of visibilities, if you have days that have, maybe not rain as much, but cloudy days with a light breeze, that is the ideal conditions, because what happens in there is those conditions mixed with that water clarity and water temperature will activate those bass that are not only on the bottom, but some that are beginning to suspend. And that's what I find to be the most outstanding conditions for December fishing. Like right now, I'm heading to Stockton Lake. It's cloudy today. We're going to have overcast conditions. I'm really expecting air temperatures are going to be, probably about normal. It's supposed to be in the mid 50s or so, which is sort of close to normal for this time of year. I expect the fishing to be really good today based upon the conditions we have. Now, what happens on there is right now, under these conditions, I consider this ideal fishing conditions. Now, either side of that, if you have conditions that like, let's go to the opposite. If you have a condition like right now that is like, sunny with not much wind, that type of a deal, fishing is going to be a little bit tougher, in December under sunny conditions with not much wind, unless you move to a part of the lake that has a little bit more off-colored stained water. Say for example, if I went, if we were going out today and there wasn't any wind, it was bright sun, partly cloudy, just average weather, average temperatures, that type of stuff, I would look for those bass to be biting better, maybe up in some of those creek arms. I'd probably get into some of those creek arms, throw a jig or throw a crawfish, colored crankbait, not in the dirty water, but the water that's a little bit more off color than the main lake. So you can adjust your approach and your technique based upon the weather. Like today, for example, it's going to be that 2 to 4 foot visibility that I'm going to be fishing. I really look for those fish to be biting a jerk bait. They bite probably a swim bait, an Alabama rig, some type of moving bait coming through that area. So that's one of the things you sort of have to do, is and you do have to do that with fishing all the time, particularly in December, because the December fish, you're dealing with two different populations of bass most of the time this time of year. You have bass that are still bottom oriented and are using the bottom in that 10 foot and less zone. And then this time of year, you're starting to get those fish to suspend. They're starting to suspend a lot of different depth ranges, again, based upon your water clarity. If you're fishing a really clear lake like Lake Lanier in Georgia, Bull Shoals Lake in Arkansas, that type of stuff, you may have some bass that are suspended 30 to 40 foot down in December. But if you're fishing a lake like, Grand Lake in Oklahoma, Lake Eufaula in Alabama, some of that stuff that's got more dirty water, those bass are going to start to suspend a little bit, but they're going to suspend shallower. They're going to suspend in that 3 to 5 foot zone over like 10 to 15. So again, a lot of it's just relative to water clarity and that type of stuff. Now the weather conditions, based upon how those fish are setting up and the water clarity has everything to do with it, because if you have a condition, let's say for Grand Lake, for example, if you have like a 1.5 to 2 foot of visibility, those are the days that you want a little bit brighter conditions. You want, sunny skies, you want the light winds, not anything over 10 miles an hour. I prefer in December a 5 mile an hour wind or less. I just want the water rippled, but I don't want it to like make me feel cold or interfere with my casting. Under those conditions, if you lose your water visibility, you will still have those same fish suspending and using the bottom, but in that decreased water clarity, the brighter sunlight penetration into the water will actually help you out as far as getting more bites. So again, it's a combination of wind, water temperature, and water clarity as far as the best days on their lake. So if you were to ask me again to sort of get back to the topic, what's the best weather conditions to fish in December, I would tell you that that's an impossible question to answer unless you fill in the information as far as the type of lake you're fishing, the angle of the bank, the water clarity, water temperature, and then you can decide what is the best conditions for you to fish. So it just goes back again to, I always say that bass fishing is the most difficult sport in the world because there's so many variables involved with it, and it's never ending. And when you're talking about weather any time of year, particularly in December, you've literally got a list of, I could list out 50 different variables as far as you'd have to punch in to give you like the ideal situation to fish in. So it's something that comes with experience. It's something that, learn as much as you can about it online. Nothing will replace on the water time as far as, seeing how those bass react to different sunlight penetrations at different times of the day, different wind directions, different, humidity levels. There's so many different factors that determine into that. But one of the things you always want to remember, though, in bass fishing is that, the fish are always biting somewhere. It doesn't make any difference. I don't care what the conditions are, unless the lake's frozen solid up here. It can be the worst conditions you can imagine, and somebody's always going to catch the fish because there's always a population of fish that are biting out there. If you can basically present the right approach to them, the right technique, the right color, or the timing that goes with it, as far as to catch those fish. So anyway, just a little bit of an overview there of some of my opinions on December fishing. To recap, overall to what I'm saying as far as what is the best conditions, to simplify it a little bit, is that the lake you're fishing has 2 foot or greater visibility, actually more like 3 foot and greater. Your cloudy days with light winds are going to be your best, bet to catch them. And if you lose that visibility and you have less than 2 foot of visibility in the water that you're fishing, those brighter days with light wind is going to be a little bit better. One of the things that I don't like in the winter times, I don't like wind. I don't like any type of hard wind. I don't like any wind over like 5 miles an hour, like I said before. Not only it makes the fishing uncomfortable, but it doesn't do anything to really activate those bass unless that water temperature is over 55 degrees. In my opinion, it takes away a lot of it. So anyway, gonna get up here and got all my jerk baits tied on. Should be a good day on the water, and we'll check in a little bit later with another video. See y'all later.